Hi, I'm Anupriya Ramraj from Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and I'll be talking to you today about IT transformation and the journey to OpenStack private clouds. Transformation to OpenStack private clouds. Who's doing it and why? Let's define the opportunity here. Private clouds are here to stay, and they're gaining significant traction as enterprises make a quest for software-defined data centers, which are characterized by increased IT automation, efficiencies in resource allocation and utilization, and a focus on security and compliance. You probably heard this term many times over here. How many admins per 1,000 nodes do you need to operate a private cloud? And that is a key metric that's driving this transformation. And in terms of security and compliance, we deal with customers that are from, say, the defense industry that have to deal with ITAR compliance. We have clients from the medical industry that have HIPAA compliance to deal with. So when you have these compliance regulations in there, then private cloud is definitely your cloud of choice. And furthermore, OpenStack is the platform of choice for several of these customers that are seeking to deploy these private clouds. And HP Enterprise Services, I'm part of the Enterprise Services division in Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, and we are helping, we consult in the transformation and help customers along this journey to OpenStack private clouds. So we'll be sharing as part of this talk some of the best practices in architecting, deploying, and operating these OpenStack-based private clouds for enterprise customers. What are the top considerations you need to take into account for transforming your data center into one that's running OpenStack private clouds? This is the list based on the experiences we have. First of all, you've got to start with finding the right mix. And I'll talk to you a little bit more about what is the right mix, private, public, hybrid. What is the level of automation, especially build automation that you want to build into deploying your OpenStack private cloud? How do you integrate your OpenStack private cloud with your existing toolset? You're now going to, many enterprise customers have very well-defined toolsets, and they're not going to reinvent the wheel and go with something completely new. So how do you integrate? And what are and you've got your cloud, you've got it integrated, but finally you've got to get your applications on top of it. That's where the true test comes in, so application migration. So find the right mix, get the right automation, especially build automation, integrations, and then application migrations. These would be the top considerations based on our experience. Finding the right mix. In terms of finding the right mix, I think the key consideration here is that you've got to recognize that private clouds many times are the first steps in the hybrid cloud journey for the customer. So you've been brought in to deploy an OpenStack private cloud, but you always have to keep the entire journey in mind. So typically the customers start off with deploying an OpenStack private cloud, then they blend the best of private and public into a hybrid offering that meets their business needs. And then helps them reduce costs and focus on their apps and their business needs. And then they move on into focusing on modernizing the applications, including more of a DevOps model, faster application development and deployment, and getting all their legacy apps lined up to be in line with this new model. So we see a three-step process when we engage. We typically advise the clients on what the mix should be. We help the transformation, and then we help in the management, ongoing management of these clouds. Finding the right mix. I'm sure you recognize the picture in there. That's 20th Century Fox. And what this shows, what we're trying to illustrate here, is that the right mix is different for different customers. It's not a standard ratio that you can pull out and say, hey, do this. In the case of 20th Century Fox, HPE Helion basically helped them find the right mix for their media cloud. And the key considerations for this customer was the protection of their most precious assets, their media assets. And so in their case, as you can see from the ratios in there, they went 90% private and 10% public. So the right ratio for 20th Century Fox was 90-10, might be different for different customers. But that's part of the journey to this OpenStack private cloud, finding the right mix for your customer. Number 2 is build automation and other automation considerations around your OpenStack private cloud. So if you look through these 3 major chunks, and there are other chunks like storage as well, I think there's a lot of focus on the 3rd chunk, which is around deploying your core OpenStack services. And there are several choices in there, including Chef, Puppet, and Ansible, which are some of the top choices that enterprises make in deploying the OpenStack services. But what needs to be kept into account is that when you're looking at automation for building your OpenStack private cloud, you need to think about the other building blocks that go before your OpenStack services as well, because you need to be able to successfully do them in a repeatable and automatable manner to actually stand up your private cloud in days. And the 2 major chunks that we see are the bare metal and the network, and the storage considerations, of course. For automated bare metal provisioning, again, the approach that we typically advise customers with is if they're going with a single player in terms of their hardware vendor, then typically the hardware vendors have the best tools for managing a set of hardware. For example, with HPE, we have HPE OneView. But if you're looking at keeping your options open, then there are options available, including Cobbler and Foreman, or some choices out there. In terms of network automation, similar choice points for the client. I mean, you need to figure out a way to set up your VLAN, set up your load balancers, et cetera, which are all key components of your OpenStack deployment. And do you pick, typically, especially with the network automation piece, a lot of the tools are very hardware specific still. And you make the right choices there based on what you want to achieve there with the automation. I'm now going to take you through a workflow on how you would use HPE's Helion Lifecycle Manager, which is the key deployment mechanism that comes with the HPE distro, and how that helps you set up an OpenStack private cloud. And you'll see some of the tie-ins to what I was just talking to you about, the different layers that need to come together, including the hardware layer, the networking layer. So the first thing the first 2 steps would be figuring out, okay, where do you start with your private cloud? What is my stage 0? What is my first install node? How do I get access to it? What's the network for that? And then you choose your topology. This is a key one that you need to think about. You'll see people claim that, hey, I can deploy OpenStack in 20 minutes. But that's probably a demo topology. That's basically a single machine deployment. But if you're thinking about a large scale or even a medium scale deployment, then you got to really think through what is your deployment topology. What's your compute versus your storage nodes? What's your ratios? You've got to get your servers listed. You've got to get your base OS in there. You've got to make your base OS choices. You got to customize your configuration based on whether it's a demo mode, whether it's small scale, large scale. How do you want to separate your networks? What kind of storage? Is it Ceph? What kind of OpenStack config it is? Linux config. And then you got to start picking and choosing what servers will be playing which roles. Which ones are your Nova servers versus which ones are your object servers for Swift, for example. And because Helion, in the case of the HPE distro, since the Lifecycle Manager is using Ansible, it gives you a bunch of UI screens where you put in all your config parameters, and then it gives you the YAML files for your Ansible deployment, basically. So you run the config processor. And then you prep, validate. You make sure you've got your bare metal nodes. This is key. You got to make sure your bare metal nodes are ready in terms of firmware, in terms of BIOS, in terms of RAID configuration. And again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. It's not only the OpenStack services, it's the base hardware being prepped and ready. Your Linux configuration, get it rolled out in terms of your packages. And then comes the OpenStack install itself. So your OpenStack install is basically deciding which services you want, starting out with the dependencies. And if you use a distro, most of that dependency mapping is already mapped out for you. And last but not least, once you've done all of this, a lot of times clients would be like, yes, the deployment is done, but how do we make sure that I actually have a functioning private cloud? How do you make sure that you got your compute working? How do you make sure how your storage services are working? So there's functional tests that are included with some of the distros. There's Tempest you can run, but you got to pick a mechanism to sanity test and verify the cloud that you've set up. So this is how you get from ground zero to your OpenStack private cloud. Now you've found the right mix. You've actually done the build automation and used it to deploy a cloud. But OpenStack is not an island. You still have to figure out a way where this private cloud can live and coexist with the existing data center services. And one key consideration is IT service management. What is the customer already doing in their data center for asset management, config management, operations management, ticket systems, reporting, etc.? You need to take all of that into account. We recently did an OpenStack private cloud for a global financial services company, and these were some of the considerations that we had to take into account. So at the bottom, you see the typical set of OpenStack services. And on those nodes, we had to take care of things like making those nodes compliant with the policies in the client's data center about system patching, system inventory, security scans. So we had to make those nodes, even though they were OpenStack private cloud nodes, compliant with those policies that were already in the data center. And if you take it right at the top at the client experience, this particular client did not want to expose the Horizon portal to their end consumers. So they actually used another software to create a catalog. So if the user could go to the catalog, the end user could go to the catalog and check out a VM from the OpenStack service. So you got to think about how does this integrate with the overall service that this IT team will be exposing to the end consumers? What is the user portal? What is the user catalog? What sort of dashboard needs to exist in terms of what notifications, if a service is down, what sort of notifications need to be available on this portal? And then there is the ticketing aspects that are related to that, including so if something is down, if an end consumer is not able to reach a VM, where do they come in and file a ticket? And how is that linked back to the service itself? What if the end consumer's got a non-standard request? What if they want a non-standard VM to be hosted? Do you give them access to the Glance API and let them do it? Or is that a non-standard request, and what's the workflow around it? How does your OpenStack private cloud that you have set up tie in with asset management? So when you get new nodes added to your cluster, what is the life cycle around it? How do you manage the contracts around it? What is the business support? How do you bill your different departments for this cloud? What is the big data analysis you want to do around it? Do you want to track the number of API calls? Do you want to chart them? Do you want to slice and dice them? What kind of config management, what kind of CIs do you want to track for your OpenStack private cloud? So, and in a lot of cases, you'll find that your customers already have these systems in place, and it's finding out the integration points and making sure that these are done right. Last but not least, application migration. So when typically, this is Gartner's take at it, when a customer wants to, when the CIO raises the call, move the application to the cloud, these are the choices that are faced by the application developers. They can rehost, which means they just look at it from an IaaS perspective. They can refactor for PaaS, or they can revise for PaaS and IaaS. They can rebuild based on platform as a service or PaaS considerations, Or they can say, hey, this application is so legacy, that let's scrap it and let's go with something else. We'll use something that a software as a service, a third-party service maybe. So these are the typical choices. And as you get your applications migrated onto your OpenStack private cloud, as the customer, as you as the trusted partner, help your customer through that journey, these are some of the key considerations. You want to end up with a cloud-native architecture, especially if they're refactoring it. And you want to make sure that one of the key elements of being cloud-native is that it's portable. It's abstracted from the IaaS in the past, so you could actually move it along. And containers play a key role in there. You got to think about scaling and recovery and doing that in an automated fashion. And how much PaaS are you using? What's your deployment mechanism, et cetera, et cetera. In summary, OpenStack is a great choice for private clouds, provided the key considerations are taken into consideration. You found the right mix, you built the automation, you've integrated it, and you helped the customer along with the application migration. So have fun, guys. Build it, run it, fix it, and wishing you all clear skies ahead. Thank you. And if you want to shoot me a note, that's me. Thank you. Anupriya Ramraj at hpe.com.